Hello, Oui Croissant team. We are finals team 9, and we are here today to present our findings on our 2-day engagement we just did 2 days ago. First, let's introduce our team members. My name is Chandrak.
I'm Bohavi.
I'm Jason.
I'm Keel.
I'm Zenka.
And I'm Tyler.
And next, in our agenda, we'll first go over our assessment overview, the threats or the things that we liked what your security team did, our key findings and our remediations for them, and lastly, our business impacts. And now I'm going to hand it off to Bohan for this assessment overview.
Okay, so during our 2-day of assessment, we have 2 main goals. Our first main goal is to have a reassessment of past, in the past vulnerabilities in the previous systems, where we review previously discovered vulnerabilities to see if any remediation strategies were implemented. Our second main goal is to discover new vulnerabilities in our current system and environment. First, we test with the new social media platform developed by Oui Croissant and also interact with AI tools under beta development stage. And now I'm going to hand over to Jason to introduce about the strengths in Oui Croissant.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call attention to these 3 strengths we discovered during our reassessment of Oui Croissant system. First one I'd like to call attention from is that good news. Most of the most critical vulnerabilities that we identified during our first engagement were remediated. That is very good. Second, I'd like to call attention to is that a lot of software used in Oui Croissant system was up to date and contained no significant vulnerabilities. For example, all Windows systems were up to date with the latest version of Windows Defender, which prevented us from using very well-known exploit tools against Windows systems, and we did not identify any well-known exploits and vulnerabilities in Oui Croissant's software that were not developed by Oui Croissant. Thirdly, I'd like to praise Oui Croissant for successfully hardening most of their production servers. During our first engagement, we identified many critical vulnerabilities in the production side of things, which is very serious if the production systems are facing users and accessible to the whole internet and attackers. However, during our remediation, we found that most of the critical vulnerabilities affecting the production systems were successfully remediated. I'd like to pass it off to Zenkai to discuss our key findings.
Hello. I'd like to cover some of our critical key findings for this engagement. So as an overview, we have 4 extreme risk vulnerabilities and 8 high risk vulnerabilities and about 5 medium risk vulnerabilities. And these 4 are the extreme risk vulnerabilities. So the first 2 pertains to getting high privilege access to Oui Croissant systems. For example, the first one involves getting administrative access on desktop computers, which can introduce great risks to the organization, including data theft, data loss, data modification, and impact to Oui Croissant service availability and loss of intellectual property. The same thing applies to the second one, which allows malicious actors to gain high privilege access on a Linux system. This could mean the downtime of important network debugging tools on the system and impact the operations of the SecOps team. I'd like to hand this up to...
Yeah, hi. So next we'll be talking about a couple of vulnerabilities that we found on Oui Croissant's new Why site, the social media platform, of course. So first off, we noticed that when users make posts onto the site, making social media posts, they can edit one field in the request, namely the user ID, and they'll be able to basically impersonate any other user. If they change the user ID to, let's say, a high-profile user, they would be able to make a post on their account without having direct access or direct credentials on their account even. So the main reason for this vulnerability is that it seems as though the backend used in Y trusts the user too much, gives them too much power over making posts. In the ideal scenario, it wouldn't do this, and instead, all choosing the user ID would be based on the tokens that the server itself has given to the user, and those tokens would be valid. So in addition to that, we found a cross-site scripting vulnerability on Y, which is basically a fancy way of saying that when users make posts, they basically have free control over putting malicious code that can be run on anyone's browser. And once again, the main reason for this is that the servers appear to be giving too much power to the users. In order to remedy this vulnerability, input validation and sanitization should be put in place onto the forms that allow users to create posts. And in doing so, this would prevent any code from actually being processed, and it would instead just be displayed as text. So next off, I'd like to hand it off to Tyler to discuss the business impacts that vulnerabilities like these will have.
Okay, hello. So let's talk a little bit about why all of this matters. Like, why should we care about all of these vulnerabilities that we just discussed? What does it mean for your business? So the main 3 points here are dealing with data and reputation. So at the end of the day, really what it's going to come down to is your company's bottom line. So how much money are these going to cost you? The first point that we'd like to discuss is data modification, loss, and exfiltration. So as some of my colleagues discussed earlier, we were able to get high authority access on multiple development machines in Oui Croissant's network. And so basically we were able to do this on 2 of them very, very easily because they were using default passwords and credentials, which basically means that any employee in your company that has a limited amount of technical know-how could access these machines at a very high level, seeing all the data that is available there. They can do whatever they want with that data. They have full access to everything. They can modify it, they can take it, they can delete it, they can do whatever they want. What does that mean for your company? That means possible downtime, possible loss of data, and it also means possible legal consequences as a result of PII data breach. So having this very easily accessible system by basically anybody in the company with some amount of technical know-how, like a very limited amount of technical know-how, leaves the door open for PII data to be removed from the company. So what is PII? Personally identifiable information. Being that you guys are a social media company, we expect you to have quite a bit of data on your actual users. This data could be living anywhere on the server, and depending on how it is stored, it could be taken very easily by a bad actor from within the company. Somebody that wants to get revenge for being fired, for example. And finally, major business impact is reputational damage. So as my colleague Akil was talking about a little earlier, there were quite a few issues that we found with the actual YChat site, which could cause reputation damage to Oui Croissant's team as a whole, basically in the form of losing customer trust. As we discussed, it's possible to impersonate other users on the YChat platform, which is not good at all, obviously, right? We should not have the possibility for somebody to take over somebody else's account. And at the end of the day, this is going to cost Oui Croissant money, right? Loss of trust means loss of business, means loss of money. If we want to continue growing, or if you guys want to continue growing at a fast clip like you are, over 120% year over year, we need to make sure that this is taken care of. Now leaving it open for any questions.
So very good, thank you. Very helpful. You know, my team is telling me that in line with some of the things you've brought up, that they're recommending we adopt a zero trust model. And so what is you guys' opinion on that?
Would anybody like to take this? I would recommend adapting a zero trust model, which in my head I'm defining as you're not trusting any user at any state and time. So you should be validating as much user input as possible at every single stage. So I think a good principle to have is trust no user, trust no data when it's coming from a user. Make sure that it's valid, always sanitize it. So I think that is a good recommendation.
Yeah, so I think a zero trust model will also handle some of our vulnerabilities that we discovered. So for example, the blank admin password is obvious that, but if we had a zero trust model,